Welcome back, sewists. We're going to have another two-part project this go round. This week we're going to be doing lots of pattern alterations and cutting out, and next week we'll sew it all up. Going to continue sewing up that stash. Today we're working on New Look 6575. Put it right here so you can see it nice and big. I bought last summer, I believe, this gorgeous. It is a very lightweight georgette, not quite a chiffon. It is sheer, it has a lovely border on each end of the selvage, and I'm going to put it across the shoulder, and I'm also going to use it along the facing in the front because I think it's going to be really cute. However, as I was going through this pattern, it's just a loose dolman top. You got your two front pieces, two back bodice pieces, and then a skirt front and a skirt back cut on the fold. So I was measuring, and one of the things I always worry about with a pattern like this, I love a dolman. It's right up there with raglan for me. But because it has sort of this empire waisted seam with a drawstring in it, I'm full busted, and one of the things that always happens if it doesn't have a cup option in the pattern, which this one does not, is that the seam hits me in the bust line instead of below the bust line. So I measured for myself just to get below the bust, and I want to go, like directly below the bust. I want it to hang soft and loose. So approximately 17.5 inches. And I took that to my bodice front, and the bodice front, I'm going to lay my 17.5 inches, come down 5/8 of an inch, and it is more than 2 inches shy. So that 2 inches literally would hit in the bust line. Not flattering, looks like the pattern doesn't fit, even if the measurements all do, because it doesn't lay in the appropriate space on the body. So I have to do 2 alterations on this one. The back's plenty long. When I measure the back seems way down here, so that's fine. But then it comes immediately up and like this. So the seam would come up and across the bodice and the back is actually longer. The back length is appropriate. The front length is not. I've been comparing the two things. The back sleeve is deeper than the front sleeve. So I've been trying to decide, how do I want to change this? There are lots of ways I can alter it, but the side seam needs to be the same in the end. So I have to be careful where I add it so I don't change my side seams and nothing matches up. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to alter the front of this bodice to give myself 2 more inches. And then the skirt is exactly the same measurement as my body with the wearing ease. So I need to also widen the skirt without widening the waist, because the waist is fine, always is. Waist is fine. Waist is a little big, skirt is a little narrow. We're going to do pattern alterations on this. I'm very excited to work with this gorgeous fabric. It lays beautifully. I'm going to just hold this up so you can see how soft, you can see how sheer it is too. But it's going to lay lovely. It's going to hang beautifully. This is going to be something you can just throw on over a t-shirt or over a tank top, pair of jeans, and look cute. I could also see wearing this over a swimsuit. I do love something I can throw over my swimsuit because we swim all summer. We also need an interfacing. I'm going to go with a pretty lightweight white interfacing. One is a knit, which you don't have to use knit with knit. Knit can work for other things. It has to do with the drape of the thing. And because this is such a soft and drapey fabric, I don't want a super hard and stiff interfacing, to break up that line. I want it to stay nice and soft and drapey. So I'm going to pull out an interfacing. Otherwise, let's get to pattern altering. Before you get going on our alterations, all of the small pieces, including this number 3, they have most of the directions below the pattern piece. So after I cut my pattern piece out, I keep this little piece here and I just put it back in the envelope. So if I need it, if I'm confused about anything, it's there. It's also usually in the directions, but at least you don't lose it, since most of the information you need is not on the pattern piece. This pattern has a big piece of unused tissue once you start cutting things out, and I would hang on to it. If you don't have pattern paper, leftover tissue paper, or wrapping paper, something like that to work with, this will be great for doing our pattern alterations. Now, the alteration today I'm showing is how to make for a fuller bust. But if you need to do a smaller bust, you're going to do the opposite. You're actually going to overlap where I'm going to open up. The first thing I've done is I've drawn a perfectly perpendicular line to my grain line across the middle of my garment. So this line goes exactly perpendicular. You can see the 90-degree angles of my grain line, and that's what I'm going to cut on. I went ahead and made a second one over here that is parallel to my grain line, and that's just going to help me keep from accidentally shifting anything and keep everything nice and straight. So after I've done that, I need a strip of paper that's more than 2 inches wide that's going to go underneath here that we're going to add to it. So we're going to make that next. You can use the leftover tissue. I'm going to go get my tape. So I need 2 inches is what I'm going to be adding. So I'm going to make sure I have on each side. My ruler is exactly 2 inches wide, so it makes alterations like this really easy. I'm going to just draw on both sides of my ruler, being careful not to move it. And this is what we're going to line up with. I'm going to make it a little bit longer because we want to make sure it's as long as my pattern piece. Okay, so this is what's going to go in between once I cut this open. Let's cut this open. Now I haven't trimmed away everywhere else. I'll do that at the end. I really just want to get a fuller bust line. Now this is going to make the sleeve bigger too in the front, which I'm fine with. This has a nice soft floppy sleeve. Adding 2 inches to it will be perfectly appropriate for my size. It'll look fine. And I compared it to the back. It's going to make the front and back sleeve a little more even. Okay, now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and take my pattern piece, but it's enough to work with. And we're going to start taping up. I'm going to tape one side first to that line that I drew. Now, once I get this tape down on one side, I'm going to extend these lines down. So I'm going to take my ruler now, and I'm going to extend these lines. And that's going to help me line up this bottom piece. Okay, so now I have all of my lines to line up this area. So now I can come down here, get these lined up and taped down, and then I will true up these lines on each side. All right, so now that that is together, you can see here's my sleeve. So I'm going to come to this sleeve over here. This is the easier one. And what we want to do is we want to add, so on this side, you can see they don't line up. And we don't want this weird, I'm going to make the line so you can just see how it looks. If we just trued it up, we'd have this weird jog. What we want to do is even this shape out to keep it nice and smooth. Now, often what ends up happening is you lose a little on one side and you gain a little on the other, and they even out. Sometimes, which is what's going to happen here, I'm going all the way up here to the top and down here where it starts to curve, and I am redrawing this line to make it nice and smooth. And you can see I've added here, and I actually lost just a tiny bit here. Often it's even. This time it's not, and it's fine. Like, the point is to keep the design looking the same. On this side, where we're working with the neckline, we're going to kind of do the same thing. Now, this is shaped in this neckline. So I'm going to take my ruler, and we're going to take that shape, and I'm going to straighten this out on this side, and it's going to lose a little on this side, and we're going to come in and have a new neckline shape. Now, because I've done this, it's changed the front facing. So now I have to go and change my front facing too. Doing an alteration to one area will mean you have to do an alteration to another area. But now it's full enough for my bust. I have a little bit fuller sleeve, which I think will look really cute, and that's all I had to change for this. So the front is done. I'm going to go ahead and cut this away back here because I'm going to use the same pattern extra tissue, and I'm going to add it to my skirts. So this piece is done, but we still have to do our facing. Here's my facing. So you can see here's the current facing. Can you see it shadowing through right there? The difference, and see how it's 2 inches shorter? So we're going to come in and we're going to change our face. I'm going to cut a little wider so I have a little extra on the outside. The back facing didn't change, so I don't have to worry about that. And I am going to make a mark on my facing in the same place I did on my pattern, so it's easy for me to do the same alteration to the facing that I did to the pattern. And I'm actually going to be using the pattern piece below to get my facing. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and cut on that line. I'm going to grab some tissue to go underneath it. So here's my tissue that I'm going to be adding. Tape this one down to the tissue. That's all that matters. All right, now I'm going to come up here, and now we're going to take this piece and line it up. Make sure everything lines up. Okay, now I can true this up. And I have a new facing to go with my new bodice. And then when I cut this out, I need to cut, I believe 4. I have to look at my little pattern piece. I think I need 4 of the fashion fabric and 2 of interfacing. All right, for the skirts, I did lots of vacillating. How do I want to do this skirt? I'm actually going to start with the back. The back is always more of an issue than the front for me, so I'm fuller in the back. So here's my back skirt, and I want this to just not change on this line, but to get wider, especially right here. One of the things I could do is come in and shape this side or just draw out on the side. That is an option. I didn't love that option because I really want to keep the floaty curviness of it. So I'm going to actually do the slash down the middle and spread open. The more you spread, it'll get wider here. You'll need more fabric potentially to do this. So I'm going to draw on my extra large down to a 5/8 inch line. I'm going to draw my seam allowance. Wait, 3/4 inch. Glad I read. Because we're going to have a self-casing. Okay, so you can see I've got my line here. And then I'm going to pick a spot, and it's going to be kind of down here in the middle, to do my slash and spread. And this line does not have to be parallel or perpendicular to our grain line, because we are not touching that grain line. It's on the fold and it's staying on the fold. So this is my line I'm going to cut on. Right here, it's going to be my hinge. So I'm going to put some tape on that hinge. And I'm going to cut this direction to the hinge and this direction to the hinge, and just leave a little tiny bit of paper that's going to allow me to maneuver it back and forth. All right, so can you see how that swings out? Now, the reason I draw my stitching line, because this is where everything matches up, is on the stitching line. So it's going to be a little narrower along the top and a little wider down here, but you can see how I can swing this open and add a lot more fullness. Now it adds about 1 inch here, and about 2 inches here, and about 4 inches there. So you can see how the fullness adds, and that's only on one side. So you double that for the back. And then all you do is slide your paper back under and tape it down. Now, if you want a very specific measurement in a specific place, put that on your tissue paper. Do your 2 inches apart and swing to that so that you know that you're getting exactly what you want. I've got, now this is still in the back, like the hip line's way down here. So you can see how I'm adding as I go down, because this is more up towards the waist because of how it's empire waisted. So right here I've got 1 inch. That's closer to the top of my hip. Down here, I've got 1.5 inches. Okay, that's about perfect. Let's start taping it down, and then we'll do the same thing to the front. Probably a little less in the front than in the back. I always need more. I'm actually going to swing wider in the back. I always need more in the back. And then I just have to true up my hem. Okay, so this is my extra large line. I'm freehanding this. You can use a hip curve. And there's my new hem. And there is my new back. So now I can go ahead and do the exact same thing to the front, and there is a new fuller back without changing the waistline. If you're petite, you need to shorten most likely the skirt. This is long enough. If you're very petite, this could be a dress, which would actually be adorable. But if you don't want a dress and you want it a top and you don't want it this long, the easiest way is to shorten from the bottom. Just measure up how much you want and lose that off the bottom. You'll lose some fullness, but if you're very petite, you're probably smaller anyway. Now, if you're petite and full, I would start by losing off the bottom and then do your measurement for fullness. I think that's going to be the smarter direction to go as far as the order to do things. Okay, skirt. Let's go do the other skirt and we will be ready to cut out. Make sure you iron your patterns before you get started. This is the front. I appreciate they gave us more for our casing on this. You can see how full you can make this just by swinging. Now this is the front, and I don't need to add nearly as much to the front as I do the back. I'm not going to add as much to the front. The back is where I need it. I consider this insurance. Insurance for my full hood line. Okay, we are now ready to go ahead and cut our patterns out the rest of the way. I'm going to go ahead and true up everything, and we'll be heading over to do our fabric. Okay, this is the interfacing I'm going to use. It's a knit. You can see how soft and drapey it is. It's very appropriate for the fabric that we're going to work with. So I'm going to cut out my 2 front facings out of it and 1 back facing on the fold real quick, and then we'll come on and then we'll move on to cutting out the rest. I got this at the Oklahoma City Market. Can you see how sheer my fingers show through? But that's perfect for what we're working with, and it is fusible. It's sort of a zigzag tricot knit. Love it. Since I have this super fun border print, I have decisions to make. Now, I have already decided that I would like to have this border print go across the top like this. So it'll go across the top of the thing, and then I'm also going to have it come down in the facing part. I've already made that decision. However, it would be just as cute to have it go just along the edge of the sleeve. You could have it go along the bottom of the bodice or along the top of the skirt. Now, because the skirt is curved, it would be very difficult to get this to go evenly across the bottom of the skirt. So I'm using it in the flat areas like this. And I think that is going to be my personal choice. I think it's gonna be really cute. I am throwing off my grain line. Listen, this is not something I always recommend, but I'm going to do it this time. I want this band perfectly straight across the top of my sleeve. And to do that, I've got to throw my grain line off in the center, front, and back a little bit. I'm not worried about it. I'm already working in a super drapey, crepey georgette, so it is what it is. I'm just letting you know I have made that executive decision. So we're going to cut on each end. I think I'm going to lay out everything to make sure I can get my skirt pieces out. I'm going to lay out on each end my top pieces so that they get the border in there. I hope you can see that through. So here's the border, and then it starts with just this interesting sort of basket weavy. It almost looks like a shield with a cross in it, depending on the direction you look. So I'm going to get those both cut. I'm going to have this big piece in the middle that I'm not using unless I can fold it each way and then come back and get my skirt down here. So I'm figuring out my layout right now to get my border print perfect. Okay, so here we have my bodice back. Stacy breaking all the sewing rules. I have my grain line slightly off. The grain is perfectly straight across the top of this. It will change how it hangs slightly, but not a ton, because I have such drapey fabric. So there's my bodice back and my bodice front. They're lined up so that I will have this beautiful pattern across the top of my shoulder and into the neckline. I will then cut. I have a big enough piece to get both skirt pieces out of just this fabric. And then I'm going to come back and cut my 2 front facings out of this. And then I'll cut 2 back facings or 2 front facings out of that. 1 back facing I'm going to do my best to get on the border, and 1 back facing I'll get out of this. And that will be the end of cutting. So I'll come back when I'm ready to do skirts. I'm going to get these cut out real quick. If you're working on something super soft like this, lay down weights, take your time, don't breathe heavy. It's amazing how you can blow and mess it up. I have my vents turned off just for a moment, just so my patterns and my fabric don't get blown around. The other thing you can do is you can actually lay paper below it, like tissue paper, and cut through both layers. That actually really helps. I always cut my pattern out perfectly, but you can actually cut it, not cut it out perfectly, leave extra on there and cut through both layers. And sometimes that really helps when cutting with something soft like this. I've already cut one of my facings. This will be the back side of the facing. This will be the front side of the facing. So I'm going to put one here on the fold. I've got both of my skirt pieces in the middle. And then I'm going to cut 2 more facings for the front. You can see I already got this piece for the back. The front is the one I'm going to interface because it will then hide seam allowance and the back side better. So the front's definitely getting interfaced. I'm not sure what the pattern calls for, but that is what I will be doing, especially since I'm working with sheer fabric. So this is what's left. My fabric is non-directional. I take that back. These shields all go one way. I gotta make sure my shields go the same way. I'm looking. I think they're gonna be different on my bodice. Hold on, I just noticed. We're going to have, so here is back. Here is front. Yep, see how they're flipped upside down? Crud monkeys. Okay, it's really not that noticeable from a distance, but that's the front. Oh, that makes me frustrated. It's also, what can I do? So then for the skirt, I need to make a decision. I think I'm going to flip them all. Okay, so the front bodice goes this way, so I'm going to make both skirts go that way. That's what I'm going to do. And then everything but the back will be the same. This little shield thing, whatever it is going to be upside down. Technically, it's right side up on the back, but it'll be upside down there, and everywhere else will be the same. Oh, I hate it when that happens, but there's no way I can recut it at this point. So we got to live with it. We got to just move forward. Can't believe I did that. I just can't believe I did that. Can't believe I did that. Can't believe it. Okay, I can believe it. This is what's left of my fabric. You can see I have sort of a piece here. But this, I have one long strip from selvage to selvage, and I'm folding it in half, and I'm just going to cut it straight and hem this, and this will just be a long, skinny scarf. Just a little accessory scarf, since I have just enough left for that. The one thing I have not cut out is the ties, and that's, I have not made a decision on that. I've been thinking about the ties. It has an elastic, part of it's elastic and then ties on the end of the elastic, and it makes the little drawstring. I do not think I want this right here for my drawstring, so I may go buy either a ribbon or some sort of trim that I would prefer to use in a blue. I may do that. I haven't decided yet. We'll decide that next week, because next week we're going to come back and sew it all up. If you like my pretty top, this is a laundry day. I made a video comparing two patterns and talk about the laundry day and the Sonia E Step Savannah, I think. Anyway, I'll have it linked below if you'd like to see that video and see how I sewed this up. This is another one. We're working with interesting fabric that's got panels or border print or something. This was a panel fabric, and you can see I used the border in interesting places. Okay, we're going to stop here. I'm all cut out. The only thing I have to do is fuse my interfacing. So we will start next week with sewing. So I'll see you next week when we sew it all up.